Hi everyone, and welcome to this training session on vendor profitability. I am Paul Sonneveld. I'm the co-founder and product owner here at Merchant Spring, and thank you so much for joining in today. Now, this is quite an advanced session designed specifically for Amazon vendors and their agencies that want to get a view of profitability across their vendor account or vendor accounts. It does assume some prior knowledge. Specifically, we assume that you have completed the module B4 around enhanced profitability. Mainly relates to sellers and Amazon and financial events and the like, but some of the concepts we're going to be covering today sort of build on that particular module. So if you haven't done that module, I'd encourage you to sort of pause this part of the course and just revisit that module even quickly to understand some of the concepts. All right, well, today we're going to be covering a couple of topics. Specifically, I want to take you through the methodology, and both from a sell-in and a sell-out perspective. We're actually giving you two different views of your profitability and allowing you to choose what you're most interested in. And then we'll go through how do you make your profitability more accurate, namely by uploading your cost of goods, by entering your deductions, and as well as uploading your chargebacks. All right, well, let's dive right into it. I'm using the demo account, as you can see here. And the first thing I just want to observe from a navigation point of view is we've tried to approach the vendor P&L functionality in the same way, at least from a visual point of view, as the seller profitability functionality. So you find it roughly in the same area on the navigation menu. Of course, it's under a vendor channel, but you find it there. And most of the reports are similar. So we have a channel profit report, we have a monthly profit report, and we have a product level profit report. These are conceptually similar to the ones you're already familiar with on the seller side. As you can see, there is one additional report, and that is profitability by vendor code. As you are aware, many vendors operate multiple vendor codes with different trading terms and commercials behind them. So we allow you to actually view the profitability by vendor code from a sell-in point of view. We'll get on that very, very shortly. However, I want to start here with the overall P&L. It looks and feels very similar to the seller P&L, but there are some really important differences. The first difference is we are providing you with a little toggle here on the top right to allowing you to choose between the sell-in version of the P&L and the sell-out version of the P&L. What's the difference? Well, the sell-in version, or let me start with the sell-out version, is based on the sales that Amazon registered against their orders. In other words, what Amazon has sold to their customer, what they have shipped out. And as you can see here, where we start the P&L with the revenue item, that is, what are we looking for from a revenue point of view? We use shipped product sales, the COGS view of that. We source this directly from Retail Analytics. We use that as a starting view. Just to be clear, we're not using the shipped product revenue. No, we're using the shipped product COGS from Retail Analytics, and we're using the sourcing view. In other words, the COGS to Amazon or your revenue from the products that have been shipped from their warehouse, from your inventory, as opposed to the sell-in view, which is really based on your purchase orders, right? So the actual revenue definition that we use for the P&L is the net receipts. So what are the purchase orders and the value of the purchase orders that have been receipted, where Amazon has confirmed that it's been receipted into their warehouse. So as you can see, we do provide some reconciliation between all the purchase orders that Amazon has requested, and then, how many have been canceled, rejected, accepted, and then any shortages. We show you sort of the bridge to the net receipts, but when it comes to, what do we consider to be revenue from a sell-in point of view, we use net receipts. So purchase orders that have been receipted into Amazon's warehouse. You may ask, well, what about the purchase orders that Amazon has placed but I haven't delivered yet? Well, they are currently sitting in maybe the accepted bucket or in the requested bucket, but they are not yet receipted, and thence they will not be showing up on the P&L. So in other words, if there's no receipt date on the purchase order, they will not yet be treated as revenue for P&L purposes. So Sell in and sell out. The one which you want to use really depends on your personal preference and sort of commercial philosophy in terms of how you measure profitability. But we found there's interest in both views, and we encourage you to obviously to use the one that is most useful to you. The other aspect here that we've since built into all of our P&Ls, but I just wanted to show you here, is that we have a toggle here at the top as well that allows you to go a lot further into the P&L. So by clicking this toggle, you can go really the next level down to say, right, when it comes to deductions, what are all the different deductions that are being taken into account? What are all the different chargebacks and the like? Let me just continue a little bit more around the actual structure of the P&L. So we've spoken about the revenue line and how that differs between the sell-in view and the sell-out view. The expenses are very similar. As you can see, we build them up as follows. First of all, we use advertising expenses. Now, we source those from the advertising account that is linked to your vendor account inside Merchant Spring. So in other words, we pull those expenses automatically into these P&L. There's nothing you need to do. From there, you can see that we are also including deductions, cost of goods, and chargebacks. Now, I want to go to cost of goods first, because this functionality works very similar to our seller P&L, and that is they are not entered on this particular screen, but they are really entered at a product level. So if we quickly skip to the product profit page, you will see a product level P&L. We're looking at the sell-in view. As you can see, we're starting with purchase order value here, but again, I can toggle this view between sell-in and sell-out. See, when I click to sell-out, all of a sudden I am talking about shipped COGS. Now, there are some nuances here. So just like the seller P&L, what you can do is you can use an upload template. So you can download all of your products here. In this case, we're talking about ASINs, and you can enter the COGS and upload them all in one go into our system. And you need to do that separately for both sell in and sell out. So at this point, there is no relationship yet between the unit cost from a sell-in point of view and a unit cost from a sell-out point of view. And the reason is because we allow you from a sell-in point of view to deal with different vendor codes. So if we look at the sell-in view and we look at the manual entry of COGS, you'll notice that just like seller, we're asking you for an effective date. So when would you like this cost to go into effect? And that is always a date back in time. That's the date from which we will apply the unit cost. Of course, there's the currency and the amount, but then what you can do here is you can actually enter the vendor code. As you can see, I have a whole series of vendor codes here in this demo account, but you may supply, or your client may supply, the same product under different vendor codes. There might be a local vendor code, or there might be a FOB account, for example, a different vendor code. So we've given you the ability to use and apply different vendor codes or different costs against different vendor codes. We will do all the matching in the background to automatically work out which P-order was ordered against which vendor code, and therefore we will apply the right unit cost. But yeah, keep in mind that you can apply different vendor codes. We will try and pre-populate the vendor codes here so you don't have to go and look for it. Now, on a sell-out basis, just to confuse you a little bit, on the sell-out basis, Amazon doesn't give us a view of where the product has been sourced from. Did it come from inventory that belonged to vendor code A, or did it come from inventory belonging to vendor code B? Because we don't have that signal, for now in version 1, we're asking you to enter your vendor code separately yourself. It's the same process. Again, you can use the upload, or you can use the manual entry by entering the effective date and the unit COGS. But as you can see, in this instance, for sellout, we are not asking you to enter a vendor code. Now, keep in mind that when you do enter a vendor code, that will kick off a whole series of processes in the background, and it could take up to 24 hours for your cost of goods to be reflected inside the P&L. So we will let you know through our messaging inside the app as well, but just be cognizant of this. So once you've uploaded your COGS, obviously you start to get a really good view of your product level profitability. And just like the seller P&L, we've built a handy widget here on the right-hand side that it really allows you to go and see that product level profitability at a more detailed level. And again, this little widget here is available from a sell in and a sell out point of view. You'll notice that the column selector is here, and you can surface different columns and remove some as suits you. You'll notice that we're slowly introducing the ability for our system to remember all these column selections so you don't have to reconfigure them every time you log on. Now, if we now go back to the channel level profit view, let's stick to this sellout view for now. We've just shown you how to build up the cost of goods. Now, I haven't entered any cost of goods here, so that's blank. But just like the seller P&L, that will start to flow through, and that works exactly the same. Now, from this point on, things get a little different to what you're used to. First of all, there are deductions to think about. Now, what are deductions? Sometimes we call them rebates, trading terms. There's different terminology for it, but essentially, these are the commercial agreements that you have put in place with Amazon as part of typically your annual vendor negotiation process. And it's important to note that these rebates or these deductions typically are agreed at a particular vendor code. So the first thing to remember here is that you can enter. What I'm going to ask you is, once you finish your annual vendor negotiation, you've agreed all these terms, or if you've done that already, to actually enter these into the system. So for example, you can see some examples here already. I've entered co-op MDF funds of 13.3%. That is a percentage of net receipts, as you can see up here, and it's applied against this particular vendor code. Let's say now I wanted to enter something more. I may want to put some freight allowance. I can do that here, and I can either, most rebates these days are expressed as a percentage. I can do, say, 1.2, and I can then enter that against a particular vendor code with an effective date. So let's say I want to make this from the 1st of this year. I've just negotiated these terms, and they will go right on till the end of this year. So I can do that here. And actually, this is the demo account, so it won't allow me to save this here. But if you click save, you'll see a new entry appear in here, and that will then start to be applied to the deductions line. And from a sell in point of view, we'll apply this to net receipts. From a sell out point of view, we'll apply that to your shipped product COGS. So whatever measure we have for your revenue metric, depending on we're looking sell in versus sell out. The beauty here is that we will take these deductions and also apply them back against the individual products based on where the products were sourced from a vendor code point of view as well. So this aspect is automatically applied at a channel level, but also right down to a particular product level. So that's deductions. And as you entered multiple deductions and you click the detailed view, you can see all the different deduction types here. Now, this is obviously an amalgamation across all the different vendor codes that you operate on, but as we'll see shortly, once we go to this product profit by vendor code, in fact, let's do that now. What you'll see is that you will, again, if we click on the detail, what you'll see these different rebates and deductions, and you'll see how they are applied to each of the different vendor codes in question here. And then what we're seeing in the channel profit is simply a roll-up. Now, one important point that I want to make here is in the first version of this, as I mentioned earlier, we have not built a sophisticated algorithm to work out a weighted average COGS for sellout, but we have done that for deductions. So in fact, what we're doing is we're taking the overall blended view of deductions from a sell-in point of view, and we're applying that to the sellout view as well to give you the most accurate estimate of your profitability from a sellout point of view as well. That gets us to the last aspect, which is chargebacks. Now, chargebacks are fees, and I would like to call them penalties, that Amazon essentially levies on you, often for non-compliance to their supply chain standards. For example, if you miss a booking slot or a pallet is not wrapped properly or labeled properly, then Amazon will charge you a fee for the inconvenience, for them having to essentially manually touch that particular inbound delivery and fix things up so they can receipt it into their warehouse. Unfortunately, there is no programmatic way to retrieve chargebacks from the Amazon platform. So what we're asking our users to do here is to go into Amazon and download a file, typically of 2 years worth of data, and upload it back into our system. So in your version, you will see a small little wrench here, a wrench icon next to the chargebacks, very similar to the pen, that allows you to upload that. I can show it here in the demo version simply by going to a period in time for which we do not have any chargebacks loaded. So I'm just going to pick a month from last year. And as you can see, if there's no particular chargebacks in the system, we will let you know and say, hey, your profitability might be overstated because we are not seeing any chargebacks. To upload your chargeback, simply click on this button and follow these instructions. Now, what we're asking you to do here is to go into Vendor Central, to go to the transaction screen, and we've got a detailed set of instructions here that tells you exactly how to do that. I might just share that briefly. It will take you through a particular screen inside Vendor Central here. And the idea is then, once you get into that total chargeback screen, to download the maximum range. So Amazon will allow you to extract 2 years or just under 2 years worth of data. We encourage you to go in there to download that file. It comes out as a very simple CSV. And then all you have to do, going back to our screen here, is to simply pick that file here from your hard drive and upload it. The mechanism is identical to how we process any CSV upload, but the process is quite fast, and you'll start to see those chargebacks reflected in the system very, very quickly. Now, I do want to just highlight a couple of things here that are really important to note. First of all, if you do get stuck with a specific process, we have recorded a separate video exactly through the Amazon vendor platform, step by step, on how to download that transaction file containing all your chargebacks. That's point one. The second point that I want to mention is when you look at the chargeback files, each chargeback will come with a different status, right? The most obvious one is it's charged or it's disputed. Often Amazon will waive the chargeback. Now, from a profitability point of view, obviously, we do not want to reflect any chargebacks for which you actually haven't hit your account yet. So if the chargeback is waived, we do not surface it here in the P&L. But if the chargeback is charged or disputed, we will surface that in your P&L and include it in your profitability. The other thing I want to just mention is that if you have not refreshed your chargebacks or uploaded a new chargeback file after about 4 weeks, we will give you a small courtesy message to say, hey, it could be that your chargebacks are getting updated because you may have been working through disputes and Amazon may have either rejected those or accepted those, and hence some of those chargebacks may have been waived. So it's a good practice to refresh and repeat that chargeback download and upload piece, at least I would say maybe once every 4 to 6 weeks, and we'll remind you of that as you go. Once you do that, and if I then go back to, again, a more recent time here, you will notice that, again, by clicking on the detailed P&L, you will get a really detailed view of all of the different chargebacks and the different amounts and which ones are hitting your account. As a side, what's also really useful, if you're really focused on chargeback reduction, one of the things you can do very quickly is to look at your product profit and just look at, okay, which of my products here are seeing the greatest amount of chargebacks. So it allows you to very quickly dive into, okay, if I'm going to try and fix some of the underlying supply chain issues that are maybe driving these chargebacks, sometimes they can be product related. It's a good way to pinpoint where to go look for opportunities. Now, before we end this session, I just want to revisit the profit by vendor code screen again. This is a new screen that is not available in the seller side. It is useful, as I mentioned before, to really see what is happening at a vendor code by vendor code level. We've come across vendors that have up to 22 different vendor codes. Now, it's probably a little bit unusual, but most of you will have at least 2 vendor codes within one vendor account. So it's very useful to split out profitability there. Keep in mind that the vendor code view really only exists in the world of sell-in, in the world of purchase orders, and hence you only will see a sell-in view of the P&L, and the toggle is to sell out is not available, because conceptually it does not make sense. The other thing I do want to point out there is that advertising expenses, we have had to work out a mechanism for allocating advertising expenses to different vendor codes. The mechanism that we've chosen, in full transparency, is based on units. So depending on which vendor code has supplied number of units, we have allocated advertising spend on a unit basis. I'm sure there are some drawbacks with that. I want to be transparent and say this is how we currently go about doing that, to give you some view of profitability by vendor code. Okay, that really completes this Amazon vendor profitability training session. This is version 1. We're literally about to finish our beta on this module. So if you do have suggestions or comments or things that you'd like to see us include in the next version, I'd love to see it and I'd love to hear about it. As many of you who've interacted with me know, I'd love feedback. In fact, this whole P&L wouldn't exist without your feedback. Thank you so much for tuning into this training session. Our support team is here to help you with any follow-up questions. Good luck with this module. Look forward to hearing your feedback. Thank you.